Obama's media blitz on healthcare reform rolls on today. The commander-in-chief will be the only guest on David Letterman this evening. Over the weekend, 5 pre-taped interviews with Mr. Obama aired on the Sunday morning talk shows. He did not sit down with our own Chris Wallace of Fox News Sunday. Meanwhile, Fox Business' senior Washington correspondent Peter Barnes reporting this morning the public option is still being considered and that major changes are being made to Senator Max Baucus's bill. Mr. Obama telling Univision that, quote, "I absolutely do not believe that it's dead." Appearing on NBC's Meet the Press, the president said insurance reform is a crucial component for health care reform.
Talked about making sure that there's an insurance exchange that allow people to buy in and get health insurance and negotiate as a big pool to drive down costs, making sure that we have insurance reforms that make sure you can still get health insurance even if you've got a pre-existing condition, and cap out-of-pocket expenses and so forth. Those core things that make insurance a better deal for American consumers.
For more on the president's media campaign, I want to welcome in David Johnson. He's the CEO of Strategic Vision in Atlanta, and John Buss, he's the Washington bureau chief for the Wall Street Journal. Good morning, gentlemen. Good to see you guys. John, why this push? Why now? What does he get out of this?
Traction. He wants to get this thing back on track, create some excitement around health care, get people thinking about it as a possible win, something that the Democrats can actually get through. And up until now, he's found that there's been a huge headwind dealing with this. So this huge blitz, which was really all over the map. I mean, these questions were not just about health care. They're about missile defense.
Acorn.
Oh, my gosh. There was a kind of a full range of things. The question is whether or not he was able to connect with people after they've heard so much about this, and they probably made up their mind.
But what about fatigue? I mean, at some point, if you're out there doing speech after speech, interview after interview, doesn't the message get watered down?
Well, they would say no. The White House would say, look, we have our best pitch man, an incredibly articulate president who can put this in words that kind of transcend the town hall, all of the shouting at the town halls. And so we're going to put our best salesman out there. And so that's what this was about. I think at a certain point, though, it's probably diminishing returns.
David, what's the strategy, and is the strategy working that he, as John suggests, is the best pitch man for the administration?
Well, that is their strategy. They believe that he's a great communicator, that if he goes on speaking, the American people are going to respond. They really believe in Barack Obama, and they believe that he's the only person that can sell this plan. But the thing is, it's not working. It's overexposure. Most Americans now are tuning this president out. He's done over 125 interviews in his first 8 months in office, compared to 40 for George W. Bush. And at this point, the more and more that Americans see him, the more and more they ignore him. He has become almost like the billboard you see on the highway. You pay attention to it at first, but after a while it begins fading into the highway.
What's at stake, John?
2010, not just health care, which is the most ambitious part of his domestic agenda, a huge issue for this administration to show that it has the ability to make all the other changes and do all the other programs, climate change, financial regulatory overhaul that the administration wants to do. But critically, right off in the horizon, the 2010 midterm elections. What they don't want to have happen is for Democrats to lose seriously, such that they lose majorities, which would prevent them from pursuing the rest of their agenda.
What did you make about the intervention this weekend and about the White House perhaps intervening in the New York governor race and suggesting to David Paterson that he step away? I thought that was really surprising.
Well, the White House has kind of backed off of that and said, you know, we didn't do that. But one doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes. But this is all, once again, about positioning. If it were to have happened, it's all about positioning for the upcoming midterm elections. The concern being that a tremendous advantage that the Democrats have now to pass bills in the House and the Senate gets diminished seriously, just as it did in 1994.
David, is he moving the needle on health care? Because ultimately that's what he's hoping to do. But are the polls showing the results of this media blitz? Because it didn't just start this weekend. This media blitz has been going on for several weeks now.
No, he's not moving the needle, and that's what's so interesting. Since his speech to Congress, what we've seen is the polls have gone right back to where they were prior to when he spoke before Congress. The American people have really already formed their opinion on this plan, and they're rejecting it. And what's more important is, too, we're seeing the polls are beginning to firm up as well as who do you want in control of Congress. and they're beginning to go toward the Republicans and not the Democrats. This is why, too, to coalesce around 2010, we're seeing this media blitz in some way to try to turn these poll numbers around, but nothing that the president or anyone else seems to be doing seems to be working at this point.
John, a big topic of conversation, obviously going to the UN General Assembly, is relations between the U.S. and Chinese, particularly on the tariffs regarding tires. Also, missile defense, a removal out of Poland and the Czech Republic in hopes that the Russians will step in. He needs Russia and China as an ally. What's going to happen at the UN General Assembly?
And he needs them particularly on Iran, right, where they've been blocking sanctions against Iran. The U.S. and Europe pretty much allied on that. The tires fracas with China was pretty minimal. It's a very small market. It's a small amount of trade between the U.S. and China. The concern for China is that it cascades into other zones of possible tariffs, what they would call protectionism. I think at this point that issue has kind of defused. The Chinese have sort of backed away from the tit for tat that they were threatening. With Russia, we don't know what Russia is going to give the United States, if it does give the United States something for the U.S. backing away from a missile defense system in Poland and the Czech Republic. But I think that one remains to be seen. It's not as if the Russians would come right out and say, here's what we're going to give you in return. It might be a very subtle support, or at least not blocking the U.S. on issues related to Iran.
David, I don't want to forget as well that the G20 is here in the United States. It's in Pittsburgh. It's this Thursday. So in addition to UN General Assembly meeting about things like climate change, which I'm not sure are a top priority, I know about Copenhagen, but what do we hope to accomplish at the G20?
Well, one of the things that they're hoping for the G20 is a strong photo op. Also, too, that we'll get a resounding endorsement for the policies that we've been hearing that President Obama has done. And also, too, that the world leaders will say that we are in a recovery and that it's beginning to move forward, because what the president's looking for now is really affirmation, and that's what he's looking for. And also a strong photo op, because one thing American presidents always do when their poll numbers are going down is they try to shift it to a foreign policy emphasis, and being photographed with the various world leaders will definitely help his poll numbers slightly.
John, you agree? What does he need to accomplish?
Well, I think that there's some issues in the financial regulatory overhaul world that he could make some headway on with the G20 on. I don't think it's a surprise or just a coincidence that they let be known this whole executive pay restrictions, the curbs on executive pay that the administration, the Fed, wants to apply to the banking world. And that's something that resonates with the Europeans, and so you might see some essentially lining up on that. That would be a major plus for the financial regulatory overhaul that this administration wants to enact.
All right, John and David, gentlemen, thank you very much.